I've searched many years on end.
Hey, welcome everybody to our conversation around gender-based violence. We are the youth and leaders of Walmer Methodist Church. My name is Benjamin, I'm the youth and young adults pastor here, and we feel like because of the current climate and the situations going on in the world, a very relevant conversation we need to be having right now is the one around gender-based violence. Here's some quick statistics. South African women, over 40% of them are going to be raped at least once in their lifetime. Only 1 in every 9 rape cases are actually reported, and less than 14% of those actually the rapist is convicted and then put in jail. So we have very desperate conditions in our world, and sexual violence rates in South Africa are one of the worst in the globe. And so we really want to have this conversation and say, hey, what can we do about it? What can the younger generation do to shift this culture? So here I have with me...
Hi, I'm Emily. I am 21 years old. I am a final year education student and I am a youth leader here at Walmer Methodist.
Hi, my name is Jade. I am grade 10. I'm 16 years old and I am doing conform at Walmer Methodist.
Hi guys, I'm Kieran. I'm in matric, I'm 18 years old and I'm doing leadership school at Walmer Methodist.
So we're just going to have a discussion. We want to invite you to be a part of it, and I hope that this starts discussions for you at home amongst your friends about things that we can do as young Christians in South Africa to shift culture. So let's begin by, Jay, don't you want to just read for us what is gender-based violence? Jay's hands are sweaty so far, I'm laughing, but we'll get there soon.
Gender-based violence is any act of violence that results in or is likely to act in physical, sexual or psychological harm to women.
Sure. So I think the first question that kind of gets brought up in that space is, as the two women on the panel, have either of you felt either that violence has been done to you, or have you at least felt threatened that violence had happened to you?
Yes.
Quite often.
Yeah, and it has happened. In the industries I've worked in, I've experienced things that have been traumatic and not anything that I would wish on anyone. Yeah, it's definitely a problem in our community and it's not something that's talked about enough. And people don't realize how often it happens to the people around you.
Definitely. I take some classes outside of school and I have to walk to some of them because they're quite near my house. I live in Walmer, which is not the worst neighborhood, and I know when I'm walking and I see any man walking near me, my heart starts beating fast, and I get catcalled at least 3 times every time I walk.
Sure. That, I think the first reaction that comes up with me is that's just not okay. Yeah. I'm not okay with that. So Kieran, as a guy, do you feel like you live in a constant state of threat?
For a guy, no, I don't think I'm living in a state like that, like the women have to go through every single day, when you just turn on your TV anytime and you realize what is going on with the women in our country, and it's just horrible to see that men do such things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the kind of question, before we can talk about how do we fix this, we need to figure out what went wrong. So what went wrong in culture along the line that we're in this place now, that we've so objectified women? We have an entire society that is willing to take advantage of women, and especially in South Africa, 40% of women are raped against their will. So where did that happen? Where did we go wrong?
I think we go back to looking at where social media and newspapers and magazines over decades have taken us and how they've shifted our culture completely, in that if you look at what we've put out to the world, it's just conditioned a culture of, okay, cool, women are objects. Men have the power, women are objects, I can have whatever I want. As a man, it's fine, do whatever you want. But as a woman, even if you look at the wage gap, still, stuff like that happens all the time. And it's still now less, but still seen as something that's okay to happen. And we've conditioned a culture in our society in that women are seen as less than a man.
think a lot of things also have to go back to also education, and also through the years you can see, like going back to the magazines, women have been sexualized much more than men, like for their bodies and for being married. Also, like you take the husband's last name, and I think the problem with that is also the education that goes back to even hundreds of thousands of years ago. It's always learned that the woman gets married, the father gives her to the husband. And I think that also damages the look of marriage, because it's a beautiful thing. And the fact that you also twist the fact that the woman is being given also kind of sets a pattern in people's minds that she's an object to be given.
Sure.
And I also think within cultures you realize that when a woman is married into a family, the woman is there to basically look after the house, look after the children. That's how society sees it. That's how it's we was trying to get at is like, really the woman is an object being allowed into the family, really. And the men now, how can I put this?
It's really like we have one role that we believe women can fulfill.
Yeah, basically something like that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's nothing wrong with a woman that wants to stay at home and take care of children. We're not saying that's less than, it's just wrong to assume that that's all that she can do.
Yeah.
And I think your points are really valid. I think as society we have completely objectified women, and just a quick piece of history on that. The father of the porn culture that we have today is Hugh Hefner, and in 1956 he released the first edition of Playboy. And we have seen how Playboy has become more and more explicit. And now porn is easily accessible on the internet or even on Instagram or social media. And what went from a culture that said men had to treat women a certain way went to a culture that said you can get all your needs and desires met instantly in the pages of a magazine, on the internet. And we've drilled into our young men that they can get their needs and desires met instantly. And so we've told them that it is okay to get those met. And that's actually counter what the Bible speaks about marriage and sex. And I think that's a large portion of where the problem comes from. And Jade, you mentioned two things. One, we kind of just assume that the woman is given away. And while we would say as the church, the father of the family has a spiritual role to like protect the heart of his daughter. And I'm sure like any girl with a good father knows that your father's a safe place, right? It's not okay that we assume as a woman is an object to be given away, but she's actually her own person that is co-equal to the men around her. So that's the problem with our society. How do we go about starting to fix it?
Well, I think going back to also education, like bringing it up in schools, like, hey, this is not okay. If you're learning this at home, because even if you're a little girl, 6 years old, 7 years old, and your father is yelling at your mother in your household, you're going to be learning, okay, this is what I'm going to do when I'm older. But if you educate someone at a young age, like this is not okay, you can also change the girl's point of view of allowing herself to be abused, and also the guy's view saying, I can't do this, I have to treat her away, and I can't just get what I want instantly. Like you said, like with technology and everything, the instant gratification has almost like increased the need to have everything instantly and have, this is what I want, this is how I'm going to get it, and because I can, I'm going to take it.
Yeah, sure.
I think, listening back to what you just said, it brings back this memory for me where I was in preschool, and I remember being told, oh no, if he pulls your hair, no, that means he likes you. Yeah. Oh, if he hits you, oh no, that means he likes you. That doesn't mean he's being mean to you. 100%. That means he likes you. And it's that kind of conditioning that we have to put a stop to, and let people know that, oh no, if you hurt someone, that's not okay.
Yeah.
Don't allow that to be taught to kids that, oh, no, that's definitely, he's trying to get your attention, he likes you if he does that. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that's just something that is so counterintuitive to what we're trying to get at. Yeah,
that happens. I know, I'm 16 and that still happens to me. My friends, they'll be like, oh, he's just teasing you because he likes you, he's talking to your friend, he's talking to his friends about you like that because he likes you. Like, we need to normalize not doing that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's not okay that we show affection by treating someone in a way that is not loving.
Yeah.
For sure.
And also in guys groups, you actually realize that guys speak about women as if they are objects. You realize that a lot within your guy groups. You realize when maybe a guy is speaking to his father or something, and you really speak about a girl like, oh, you're gonna get this girl, you must do this and that with her, and you're really just speaking about them as if they are an object. And I don't think that's right.
And I really think that comes from a culture that has allowed sex to become performance-based. So for a guy, he gets affirmation by how many women he can have sex with, or how many women he can get something from. And maybe that same culture said to women, the more guys that are after you or desire you, the more beautiful you are, therefore the more value you are. So we've attached so much value to things that actually aren't that valuable. And actually, like there's nothing about cross-gender relationships that's performance-based, it's love-based. And that's kind of something we need to redefine. So how do we go about starting to redefine that in culture? What is something we can do today?
I think definitely standing up if you see it happening, like in your friend groups or even with your own family, which is like intimidating. If your grandfather or your uncle have grown up with this mindset, it's daunting for me, I know, as like a young girl to say to a grown man like, hey, that's not okay, you can't do that. And I know for myself I haven't done it sometimes because it's scary. But I think in your situations where you are, generally you have to bring it up and you have to be like, you can't do that, or that is okay, or that's not okay.
Sure.
And with what Jade is saying, I feel like you should also look at yourself. Look at yourself and realize who you are with, who's influencing you. And as you learn more about yourself and you realize more of what you're doing could be wrong, share it with your friends, let others know, and in that way they can share it with their friends and it just keeps on spreading.
Start the conversation before it becomes a problem.
Yeah. So there's two sides to that. One is knowing you're valuable as a woman, and knowing other women are valuable, and so speaking up when you see something that's wrong. And actually when someone treats you in a way that's wrong, knowing you're valuable enough to say, actually, I'm too valuable for you to treat or talk about me that way. And then the other thing is actually know as a guy who's influencing you, if you're allowing porn culture, movies to influence you, that's going to affect the lens at which you look through women. And then your friend groups. I think that applies for both. Like, what are the friend groups, male or female, that are affecting you and changing the way you look at who you're hanging out with? And obviously as Christians we want to make sure we're hanging around the church, but also we want to be out there in the world reaching people, but the people that are influencing us need to be ones that are bring positive influence in. So that's really awesome conversation, and I think that's taking us like in a clear direction. But I think sometimes when we have this conversation, what we can do is we can tend to villainize men.
Yeah,
100%.
And so I wonder if you guys have any moments or stories where you have felt defended or protected or honored by men.
Well, I know, going back to my dad, like, I love my dad, he's the most amazing man I've ever met. And I know for him, if someone were to say all men are trash, are you saying my dad's trash? Like, he treats my mom like a queen. Like, in general, I've got good guy friends, and I know that they will always stand up for me if there's a situation, and if they don't, then they're obviously, I mean, there's trash among all genders and races and every people ever, because you can't generalize a group like with the all men are trash movement. So I just think you need to identify who is going to support you and who's going to treat you like trash.
Absolutely.
I mean, in my personal experiences, I've been very fortunate in my life to have had some of my best friends being men, who have always loved and supported me and protected me in instances where if they hadn't been around, I don't even want to imagine what would have happened. Like, for instance, I was at a party a few years ago and my drink got spiked.
Sure.
And I pretty much don't remember what happened that night, but I do remember that I had two really good guy friends there with me that looked after me and made sure I got home safe.
Wow. Yeah. And Kieran, like, I know that there is something inside of every man that actually wants to defend women. I think it's like almost a God-given thing.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, first I want to actually touch on what Jade was talking about the all men are trash. I just feel like we shouldn't generalize people. I don't think we should say every man, but also you gotta understand, if you are not that man, then you know that you aren't that man. So I just feel like generalization just isn't the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Really. And could you repeat the question again, please?
So I was saying that there's something inside of every man that wants to defend a woman. It's almost like a God-given gift. Or there's a man even defend other men. Like, and could you speak to that? Like, what does that like? What does that look like for a young Christian man in this culture to stand up and defend women?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just the way I was raised to care for others. I've always been raised to always look after others and put others before me.
Sure. Yeah.
It's really what it is for me.
That's really what Jesus modeled for us.
Yeah.
So, really, really quickly, like, this conversation is about gender-based violence, and I think we're going to bring it to landing soon. But really quickly, Jade, I know you looked up, what are some of the signs that we know someone has been a victim of sexual assault or gender-based violence?
Yeah, well, they are quite prominent. You can see it. Normally people have bruises and they say like, oh, I fell, but if they're doing it constantly, like every day, they're like, I fell, I hit my head somewhere, like then you're kind of picking up something. No one's that clumsy. Also low self-esteem, trust issues. If someone doesn't like you touching them, so if you put your hand on the shoulder and they flinch away automatically, then you always wonder, like, why do you do that? It's learned. It's like we're born with love. We're not born with fear and hate in our hearts. That is learned.
Sure.
I think we also need to realize that gender-based violence is also emotional.
Yeah.
It's not just physical or sexual. It's
the cat calling.
Yeah.
Or I feel threatened, even though nothing's happened to me, but I just feel threatened.
Yeah, I think that's a very important thing to remember. So sometimes the warning signs of it happening are not as prominent. They can be hidden. They can be scars hidden deep inside of us that sometimes get hidden for years and years and years, and one moment can bring them to the surface again.
Yeah, for sure.
And I know a lot of people, like, as a woman who's been emotionally abused or sexually assaulted or anything, it's almost seen as shameful to come forward and be like, this is what, like, you feel like you did something wrong, like he came to me, like, even though I let him. That's also a mindset we have to change, because we need to know, like what you said, how many cases are actually reported and how many are actually prosecuted. That is because people don't come forward because they're ashamed. So we need to change that mindset a lot. And also to what you said, if you're offended, then why are you offended? What are you doing that's making you offended?
Absolutely. So, as the church, our response, we know, is always one of love. We want to love people. And we are called to love both the victim and the perpetrator. And that's incredibly hard. And through our love, we get to shift culture. So what is one thing that we can do right now to begin to shift culture?
I think we need to continue our conversation with the people you're surrounded with. Continue this conversation of love and of acceptance and of changing the mindset that our culture and our society has put upon us. And if we continue to have those conversations with the people that you're directly surrounded with, and they continue to have their conversations, the widespread effect of that can be astronomical.
100%. And I also think the speech thing, if you're hanging around people who you feel uncomfortable talking to this about, then why do you feel uncomfortable? Do they say things that coordinate with gender-based violence or objectifying people? Like, I know if you see someone and you feel embarrassed to bring it up, why do you feel embarrassed? Like, what have they put on you to make you feel like that? So I think also the conversation must be spread as far as you can, and you must also hang out with people who will discuss it.
Yeah.
Once again, I want to actually come back to looking at yourself as well, because you can't expect to change somebody else if you are still doing the same thing.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's incredible, Kieran. I think for myself, there's two things I want to highlight. One, that the enemy is going to do the best that he can to divide the male and female genders from each other, because he knows how powerful it are when we are united. And we've seen him do it in the church, where for years he convinced us that women weren't equal to men in the church. And we are seeing him doing it now, where he is tearing apart male and females, even in the church. And that's something we need to combat, and we need to love and honor one another. And then the other thing is, just as a victim of sexual abuse, I think I want to speak directly to people that as we've had this conversation, you have become aware that you were mistreated or misunderstood, or actually there has been an instant in your life where you actually feel like you were not treated in a healthy way. And I want to encourage you that speak to someone that you can trust. The church is a great place to start. If you don't feel like you have anyone in a church, or you don't know someone you can trust, there are psychologists, there are school counselors, the police station is also a good place to start. And I just want to encourage you, like, reach out to us at Walmer Methodist Youth. We have people that would love to help you, and you can see who the generation is here that are trying to fight to change the narrative. And so we are going after relationships that are healthy and godly, where male and female pursue each other for sex inside of marriage, where it is a mutual beneficial thing. And that is what we're fighting for, and that's the standard we want to set. And there's no other standard across the world that can ever stand to what God placed in the Bible. So thank you guys for being the generation that's willing to fight and push in, and let's keep the conversation going. Thanks for joining us.